Today, when I was getting ready, around 10 o'clock, Amalka called me and asked, Swaminatha, can you add something? Could you discuss a little about the importance of Poson Poede? And then around 2 o'clock, Varuni called me and asked, Swaminatha, are you ready? Now, those two questions, although the whole discussion is supposed to be around the slumber mind and an awakened mind, those two questions woke me up. And I was thinking, yes, we should tell our non-Sri Lankan friends about the Poson Poede. And also that Varuni asked if I'm ready to teach you how to awaken your mind from the slumber mind. Then it struck me that I'm not ready. So excuse me that I won't be talking about that topic today. And you know who to blame, Varuni and Amalka. But again, towards the end, you might see that why we should also be thankful for Varuni and Amalka. So I also heard that you had a previous session from Bhante Dhammajiva and Upulsa, who are two great teachers of meditation. Some of you might have joined it, some of you might not have. And for people who have joined it, you have learned it all. So you don't need to again learn meditation from me again. But I know that you're not going to listen to what any speaker is going to say, and you need repeat sermons, repeat discussions on the same very simple topic. So I'll do that, and let's see if I'm ready to deliver that slumber mind to awaken mind. So with that, let's start with now before coming into Poson Poede, if there are listeners who are not from Sri Lanka, Poya days are a national holiday actually. I don't know if it's a mercantile holiday. It is a mercantile holiday. It's a public and a mercantile holiday. And we celebrate Poyas. Poya is a full moon. The waxing and waning of the moon, when it comes to its peak, when it's full moon, we celebrate the Poya day. And the importance of Poson Poya, like Amalka mentioned, that is the story where Buddhism came to Sri Lanka. And there are some historical evidences that Buddhism prevailed even before, but this is the given legend. This is the most known story that Emperor Ashoka, we don't know if he did with a good intention or with a expanding emperor mindset, but whichever way, we are very thankful for him for doing that. He sent his son with another set of monks, bhikkhunis and lay people to Sri Lanka, and they met King Tissa. Now, when they met King Tissa, it was an interesting story that King Tissa was running behind. He was there for game. He was hunting, and he was hunting a deer. And then Bhikkhu Mahinda, who's the son of Ashoka Emperor, who's a Buddhist monk now, he asked a few questions from King Tissa. Now, I'm sure the Sri Lankans know it. The questions asked were, dear sir, what do you see behind you? Then the king has said, it's a mango tree. Then he asked, Bhante asked, are there any other trees than the mango tree? We said, yes, there's plenty of other trees. And then he said, are there any other trees apart from these other trees? He said, yes, that's the mango tree. Now, it looks like a very simple set theory based conversation. Now, what you probably know the set theory. You can put something on a set. This particular group belongs to this set, and there are things which are outside that set. So that is not in that set. So that's simple set theory. But I don't think the story ends there. What he gave as a message is very profound, and it's actually the ultimate profoundness that you find in Buddhism. So when Bhikkhu Mahinda was asking this question from King Tissa, what do you see? A mango tree. Now, assume for a moment that I'm asking you the same question. I'm asking you if you can see a mango tree outside your window. I'm asking, why do you call that mango tree a mango tree? Now, that's an obvious question. You would say, Swaminatha, it bears the mango fruit. The leaves are like mangoes. The bark, the shape, it's a mango tree. Very simple question. I'm asking again, why do you call it a mango tree? Your previous answer was correct, but let me ask you again, why is it called a mango tree? Then you are going to say, well, if the previous answer is valid, but you are not accepting it, yes, probably it's the norm, that mango is the norm that we gave to that mango tree. Actually, we haven't, our ancestors has given the name mango tree. And I'm not going to accept that answer as well. So then now you might think a little more philosophical. Why is mango tree called a mango tree? Then some philosophical guy might say, well, it's our knowledge. We knew. Like a foreigner who has never seen a mango tree would not know this is a mango tree. So it's really us having that knowledge, possessing that knowledge, makes us say that it's a mango tree. It's a theoretical way to say it, or the philosophical way to say it. I'm asking you again, why do you call it a mango tree? So I'm not accepting the answer that we call it a mango tree because it's the characteristic of the mango tree. Know the reason that it's the norm, or that we know it's our knowledge. That is those are not the answers. So then what is the answer that I'm looking for? In order to help to get there, let me ask another question. Now assume a world where you take all the men out from this world. If you are familiar with this movie Wonder Woman, it's somewhat shows something related to that, something like that. There are no men in that Wonder Woman world. So assume, it's a thought experiment, assume that you take out all men from this world. First of all, there's going to be less heartbreak, because you won't be complaining that the toilet seat is up again, and the smelly laundry is out there. You won't be complaining about a lot of things. So when the men are taken out from the equation, and assume that somehow the kids can grow again. That has to be female children. Children can come out. Children can come, and there are no men. And a few centuries go, and the slightest name of man is taken away from, eradicated from that culture. The remainder, what would you start calling this remainder now? Would you call them women? Is there a need to call them women? Because we earlier called them women because they were men, but now there's no men. Should we call them women? We can just call them human, right? We don't need to call them women particularly. But then again, I'm asking you another similar question. Why do you call human human? Well, the obvious answer is that we call them human because it's the norm, it's the characteristic, it's the knowledge. That is why we are calling them human. I'm asking you again, why do we call the human human in this hypothetical world where there are no men, there are only women? So we call them human. Now, an interesting way to look at it is that, what if we take all the animals away also from that world? Would you necessarily want to call the remainder human? Or can you just call them beings, just beings? Because we call them human because they were non-human animals. Now we took out all the animals, from the big ones to the microbes. Now there's only human. Would you want to call them human, or would you just rather call them beings? Now I'm going to ask you the next question. Why do we call them beings? And that's quite confusing. We call beings beings because they are beings. They can move, they can consciously think, etc., etc. So if we take out all the non-conscious, non-moving things away, what would we call the remainder? Again, I will ask the question in a different manner. Suppose that there are two glasses of water in front of you. One is hot, one is cold. I'm asking you to put your hands in both the glasses, in the hot glass and the cold glass. Why do you call the hot glass the hot glass? Why do you call the cold water glass cold water glass? Again, you can say that hot is hot because it's X amount of X degrees of Celsius or Fahrenheit, or it's the vibration which makes the heat of any element, of any physical thing. So that is why we call it hot, or there's a discomfort. But again, I'm asking you the question to look at it from a different angle. Why do we call hot the hot and cold the cold? What if we take out all the cold water out of this world? Will there be a separate hot water? Now this, I don't know if you figured this out already, but this particular concept is one of the most profound and basic concepts in Buddhism, the dependent arising, or otherwise known as Paticca Samuppada. The existence of one is because there is an existence of an inverse. What do I mean by that? Now let's take the eye. What is an eye? Eye is the device that we see images. Then what is an image? Image are the things that we see from the eye. So it's quite linked. Although eye and images are two different things, how can we separate them? Eye is the device which shows us the images. Images are the things that we see from the eye. Can we talk of an eye without an image, or can we talk of an image without an eye? Not possible. So you see that world sits on a certain dualistic nature. It has certain duality, and again this duality is not individually sustainable. One is prevalent, one is there because of the existence of the complete opposite. So when Amalka told the story of the entering of Buddhism to Sri Lanka, now the first question that Bhikkhu Mahinda asked from King Tissa is not a question to be misunderstood or to be taken lightly at all. It's a very profound question, and the king gave a very profound answer. And why did I tell you that? Now, yoga is something which is not to be taken lightly. And last time when I said I insulted you is because you call yourself yogis and yoginis. But I have a doubt if we should really call, most of us, not everyone, if we should really call ourselves yogis and yoginis. Because like that simple question King Mahinda or Bante Mahinda asked from King Tissa on that Poya day, yoga sits on a very profound philosophical background. And without knowing that philosophy, it will be quite a shame to call ourselves yogas and yoginis. So the question is that what makes a yoga instructor or a practitioner of yoga different from a gym instructor? Now that is where we will have to find this answer. You find gym instructors, with all due respect to the gym instructors, is a yoga instructor also another version of gym instructor who does a different type of a set of exercises. And we see that if you YouTube, or if you search on YouTube, or if you just look around, yoga teachers are talking about body, mind and soul. And what we mean by body is asanas and vinyasas, flows. And how is it different from high intensity interval training? And we think of mind. We think that after the yoga practice that let us think about one positive thing that which we wish for the world, etc., etc. How is this different from positive thinking? You know, all the gurus, they have positive thinking sermons. And we talk of soul, and often we do a puja or chant Gayatri mantra or some mantra in the morning or in the evening, and then we call that this is the medicine for soul. So is this yoga for you? If this is yoga for you, then you will have to reconsider to call yourself a yogi or yogini, or even a yoga teacher for that matter. Because yoga, like that question of Bhikkhu Mahinda, is absolutely not about a physical exercise, is absolutely not about positive thinking, and it's not about just chanting a Gayatri mantra or doing a ritualistic puja. Now, the other aspect is that, again, when we look at yoga YouTube videos, that I find a lot of health claims that it reduces blood, it's good for your pancreas and kidneys, and it helps sleep apnea, it prevents corona, etc., etc. Now in this forum I have met some great people like Dr. Gauri Balan. He's I don't know if he's in the audience, and Dr. Sivananda, the originator of Sivananda tradition. They are all doctors, so they with their medical knowledge come up and say, yes, yoga has all these benefits, and they have medical tests to prove these claims. But again, just imagine, are all these claims true? Does doing some asana helps your pancreas and kidneys and liver, and even, you don't know even these things exist in your body. Is this really true? Or is it just we are listening to someone's claim and we don't know? This brings, by any mean, I'm not saying that yoga is bad for your health, or yoga does not have any effect on good health, both physical and mental. There is, I'm sure that there is. But other alternative exercises, not exercises, other alternative practices, say Qigong or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they also do the same thing. And how and why is yoga different to that? So with that as an entry to our discussion, let me say that what you perceive as truth is bound by your knowledge and beliefs. Now that's a very big statement again. What you perceive as truth is bound by your knowledge and beliefs. You believe that yoga is going to help you with something, and that is your knowledge, that's what you think which is true. But I'm now saying that truth that you perceive is bound by your knowledge and belief. And back in the day in India, a set of people who are very keen on finding the truth of the world, or rather this particular subject called epistemology, or in Sanskrit or Pali it's called the pramana, or proof of knowledge, or the truth of knowledge. What we know is knowledge, and what is the truth of knowledge, or what is the proof for that knowledge, epistemology. So they have had a lot of schools of thought in this subject, and you might be now wondering, how is this all connected to yoga? Let me just sit back and let me tell you how it is connected to yoga, and why you should know all these things when we are yogas and yoginis. The epistemology or proof of knowledge consists of few approaches. Now, one school of thought called Charvaka, they were absolute materialistic Indian philosophers. They told there's only direct perception, and anything that we know can be known as truth only if it's a direct perception, and they called it Pratyaksha. And what is Pratyaksha? Seeing is believing. You have your eye and you see images, and if you can see images and if you can see a particular image, it is truth. If you can hear a particular sound, it is true. Otherwise, it's not true. So that is how they found the proof of knowledge. And there was another set of philosophers. They said there's anumana, inference knowledge. Now, what is inference knowledge? That moving from a premise to a logical consequence is inferencing, or conclusion based on evidence and reasoning. Now, I'll tell you a very bad example for inference knowledge. One of my friend bought a lottery yesterday, and all of a sudden he's missing. He was working with me. He was working in a particular office. He bought a lottery, and tomorrow he's not at office. He's no more there. So I can infer that he has won the lottery, and that's why he quit his job. So that is inference knowledge. It's again a very bad example, but inferring anumana is something like that. Another set of philosophers, they told there's upamana, which is comparison and analogy, postulation. Basically, let's say that another example, a bad example again, our thoughts are flowing. Rivers are also flowing. Rivers cannot be contained because their natural innate nature is to flow. Hence, thoughts also cannot be stopped. Now that is upamana. Right? So I can go on about Anupalabdhi, Shabda, etc., etc. So there were a lot of schools of thought, and in the backdrop of all these thoughts came yoga. Actually, yoga was there before, but yoga was in the backdrop of all these philosophical ideas. Now, Buddhism and Jainism, these schools of thoughts, they have also adopted yoga. In fact, you might think that yoga is a Hindu doctrine, but in fact, Buddhism has adopted yoga much earlier, and a lot of us probably don't even know about it. So remember that Charvaka, who was a materialistic guy, there was a totally contrasting idea to Charvaka, a Buddhist school of thought called Yogachara Vijnanavadi. Now, Yogachara means the one who practices yoga. So Buddhist monks were really practicing yoga, and Vijnanavadi means the doctrine of consciousness. So Yogachara Vijnanavadi was a set of school. Again, in a very gross manner, let me say that what they believe, Charvakas believed, seeing is believing. When you can see, that is the truth. But the Vijnanavadi school of thought, they believe that even what we see is a manifestation of our consciousness. It's what we interpret in our mind. So what we can only talk about really is about our mind, so only about our consciousness. So they believed in that. So you would see that there's two extreme schools of thought, Yogachara Vijnanavadi and Charvakas. And in Buddhism, in Buddha's doctrine, at least in the initial Buddhist doctrine, you find this beautiful quote, Manopubbanga Madhamma Manosetta Manomaya. And don't worry about the Pali meaning. What it says is that our mind, let me take a upamana, an analogy, and explain you this. Our mind is always in the forefront and the body follows it. So for example, imagine a bullock cart where there's a bull and there's the cart. So the bullock cart consists of the bull and the cart. Cart is like our body and the bull is like our mind. So cart is a very essential part in the bullock cart. However, bull or the cow is the one who drives the bullock cart. So mano pubbanga madhamma means the mind is always in the forefront, but it does not mean that mind is the only thing which is in existence. And again, building upon that idea, you can also say there's a soul who's the driver, who's directing the bull to go into different directions. That's the soul. So again, there's that. And in this backdrop again, now when we talk about yoga, a name that we cannot talk about is Patanjali. Patanjali is a great linguist, and again I'll tell you why, maybe probably on a later day, why Eastern philosophers are linguistic experts while Western or Hellenic philosophers are mathematical experts, or they are experts in logic and reasoning and mathematics, where the Eastern philosophers are experts in linguistic. So Patanjali was a linguistic expert roughly about 300 years after Buddha. The exact date is a little controversial. He wrote 2 books. One is called the Mahabhasya. It's about Sanskrit grammar. But actually, for a normal person, it would be about Sanskrit grammar. But again, it does not mean Sanskrit grammar. Why I say that? If you have ever done some serious meditation, there's different states of mind that you can go into. Prathama dhyana, dutiya dhyana, etc., etc. And again, if you don't know about these things, don't worry. If you by any chance have gotten into any of these states of mind, that you would see that there's a state where the words don't exist. What I mean by that is that in a normal world, in a normal existence, we think with words. We either think in Sinhalese, English, or whatever your mother tongue, or sometimes you can think in multiple languages. Whenever you think, your thinking is associated with a word or a language. And a language is basically a set of concepts. And in the Buddhist technical term for that is called vitakka vichara, or words. So Patanjali, when he wrote the Mahabhasya, it was not about grammar, it's about this very particular meaning of words. Again, we are going into what is knowledge. So Patanjali was really looking after what is knowledge and what does a word mean. In Buddhism, there's another word called Sakaya Nirukti, which has given a very prominence to the importance of words. And then the next book Patanjali wrote was called Yoga Sutra. Now Yoga Sutra again has 4 parts. So all the yoga that we know comes from this big book, Yoga Sutra. It had not chapters, but it had 4 sections, the Samadhipada, Sadhanapada, Vibhutipada and Kaivalyapada. So 4 sections. And in this first section, Samadhipada, it's all about detachment, enlightenment, and about epistemology, proof of knowledge, pramana. And there was the Vibhutipada, which is about manifestation of or the power of mind over the physical world. And then there was Kaivalyapada, which is about detachment again, absolute unity, liberation, isolation, etc., etc. And there was the Sadhanapada, where it had the 8 limbs of yoga, the Ashtanga, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi, right? So as one part of this that we are doing Dhyana or Dhyana discourse. So you see why I mentioned this great book of Yoga Sutra by Patanjali. Asana and pranayama, which we practice today as yoga, is only a very minuscule part of what Patanjali has written. And it is an important part, the practice is a very important part. However, asana and pranayama it does not represent yoga at all. It's a total different representation of yoga. So if you don't know the rest of this philosophy, what I told about the pramana, the epistemology, different schools of thought, and the yoga mantra, yoga sutras of Patanjali, then we do not deserve to call ourselves as yogis or yoginis, right? Again, with all due respect to you, Why I say that is that it's a common misinterpretation which happens when we start studying yoga, that it just boils down to a stretching exercise. And I remember the first time that I got to know about yoga before the Rishikesh thing, where I met a great Guruji who's a proper yogi. The first time I asked around about a yoga class, I couldn't attend that, but my friend who was introducing me to yoga said, well, it's a great exercise thing. It's really great. You would be very relaxed and all. But there are some meditative things and then mantra chantings. Don't do that because they are quite supernatural, and you can even get possessed by a Brahma or like a bad spirit or a good spirit. So that's a bad part. Just do the exercise part and do your yoga. So I couldn't attend that class, but that's what my friend said. So without knowing the philosophy of yoga, us calling ourselves yoga is like we talk with the guy who climbed Mount Everest, Edmund Hillary. We have climbed 2 stories in our house or the temple, and then we are talking about climbing. Or we are talking football. Cristiano Ronaldo is talking about football, and we have played kindergarten football, and then we are talking about football. So what I'm trying to say is that what you probably know, if you already don't know what I'm saying, is only a small grain of sand in an entire beach. Out of many grains of sand, it's only a very small part that you know. And why do I tell this again? Yoga is not is not to post on Instagram, right? Yoga is a much more profound 3,000, 4,000, 6,000 year old philosophy, which is a path of liberation, right? So that being said, let's get to slumber mind and awakened mind. Now, suffering. There's a lot of talk about suffering in Buddhism, and just the word suffering, you would see that suffering has many forms: physical suffering, mental suffering, and philosophical suffering. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, could someone, again I have to ask rhetorical questions, what is the cause of divorce? Now you would say, the incompatibilities, parents are getting involved, especially in Sri Lanka, and extramarital affairs, adultery, those are the causes of a divorce. But what if we say like this, the cause of divorce is getting married? And what's the cause of death? What's the cause of illness? What's the cause of all these issues that we come across? It's the birth, right? Now, why I said that there's 3 types of suffering in existence. Physical suffering, the illnesses, the ailments that you know. The mental suffering, the heartbreaks, all the bad things happening to you, the stresses, the depressions, But sometimes there's a 4th type of a suffering. It is actually not a suffering that you feel, but it's a philosophical suffering. The issue for all these things is the birth. But why it becomes a problem is that you can never relate to it in real life. When a child is born, you never call it a start of a suffering or a beginning of a suffering. You just celebrate it. In fact, you celebrate your birthdays, so you can never tell that it's a suffering. So it's very important to understand that there's a philosophical approach to it, and there's a very layman approach to it. And I would rather choose the layman approach. But there's another problem with it. The problem is that what I have to tell about slumber mind and awakened mind is really simple. It's so simple that you are going to discard it and forget it. And because I know that you are going to discard it, I had to pull my knowledge of all the pramana, epistemology, and etc., and throw at you and say this is important. But in reality, it's extremely simple and it's no magic at all. So let's focus on something really simple. One of my teachers of yoga, Dinesh from Rishikesh, he asked this question one day from the audience, from the class: what's the most difficult part of yoga? What's the most difficult part of a yoga practice? So there were different asanas that he was saying, and mind you that he could do all the fancy asana, fancy poses. So then he said the most difficult part of the yoga is unfolding your mat and getting onto that mat. That is the case for many of us, including myself. But luckily I did my morning yoga today, but most of the days it's a most difficult thing to do. So let me ask the question again. I asked you the other day also, why did you start yoga? Now yoga you start because you need a toned body. The men, they get the belly shaped, apple shaped belly, or women start collecting their fat underarm or wherever, and you need a toned body. So that is one reason that you start yoga. And again, like all these claims, they say that yoga is great for diabetes, it's good for hypertension, etc., etc. So for that matter, you do yoga. And there are some people who are sporty naturally. They have tried football or rugby when they were young, and now they are too old. They need a joint-friendly sport, so they switch to a more healthier, a more age-friendly yoga practice. And there are numerous reasons like that, and there's peer pressure also. Sometimes, everyone is going for yoga, so I also has to go for yoga. And probably the biggest upcoming yoga category is the Instagram yogis. Now, if you go on Instagram, I have an account, and whenever I go there, I see that a lot of people are posting these yoga poses. So Instagram is helping a lot with yoga poses. So there are Instagram yogis. And there's one important category. Just think, if you are belonging to this category, that people who have had a traumatic event or an issue like a heartbreak, loss of something doesn't work the way we want, you get into a depression, you get into an issue, and then you start yoga. Now that is a group that I like a lot, because they really have a issue that they want to solve, and they use yoga for that. And even the other people who have started yoga for numerous reasons, even for them, when they stay with yoga, just think, for whatever the reason you started yoga, be it any of those reasons, but why did you stay with yoga? Now you would say, or a depressed person who got into yoga would say, well, that is the place where I'm completely free, that is my zone of relaxation, that is where I feel freed, right? I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about, how free you feel when you're on the yoga mat during that 30 minutes, 1 hour of yoga practice, that you're absolutely free. And now let's see how this happened. What's the mechanism of this us getting freed? Now, how does this happen? We discussed in a very philosophical manner, but let me tell it to you in a very simple, understandable manner. How do we find this freedom, or how do we find this relaxation on the yoga mat while we are doing yoga? You probably know, in our you probably have classes of yoga, and usually most of the attendees, about 70%, are usually female women. And I'm not trying to stereotype people, but when women get together, they like talking to each other of all sorts of things. And imagine that you have a yoga practice, and then you are late for 5 minutes, and all these ladies are gossiping about so many things in Colombo and Sri Lanka. There's a lot of chatter, and that room is not a suitable room for a yoga. It's not a suitable yoga studio, because a yoga studio is a very calm place where you don't have loud noises, etc. But when these people get together, they just chat and they talk. Similarly, our mind has a chatter, right? That's what Patanjali was talking about his grammar. We have this mind chatter. In our normal state of mind, we always talk. We don't talk necessarily with people, but we talk internally. Our thinking is a lot of chatter. And how do the scientists explain is that we have about 100 billion neurons in our brain, and these neurons have interconnections called neural links. And they say that there are about 10 to the power of 15 times of neural links. Now it's an unfathomable number, 10 and 15 digits following. So it's a huge number. Imagine all these neural networks firing up, talking to each other. There's a lot of mind chatter inside your mind. Again, when you look at your problems, the issues that you have, most of these issues you have are mental issues. Now, why do I say that? Right now, all of you who are present here, only a very few, only about 5%, 10% would have a real physical issue right now. But if I ask, do you have mental issues? Well, most of you might have certain issues. And if you look at it, most of them are not physical issues. Now, a division of what a physical issue is, that it's quite hot here. It's burning hot, it's scorching hot, or it's really cold. That's a physical issue. But a mental issue is that, would that person didn't smile at me the other day. Is there something that I did which made that person not smile at me? Or am I going to lose my job because of COVID? Or am I going to die? Am I going to get sick of a cancer, etc., etc. So those are mental pains, and there's a marked difference between a physical pain and a mental pain. And if you look at all these mental pains are only old memories which are good or bad. Now, not only pains, the good side of it also. Our mind chatter is mostly about a association of an old memory, which can be a good memory or a bad memory. And then the next type of mind chatter we have is a contemplation of future, about our fears or our cravings, right? So this is our mental chatter, this is our mind chatter. And there's one moment in yoga that when we are doing this asana, we are in a state that we cannot consciously think of all these old memories or the future contemplations. Our mind is strictly on our body. Our mind sort of overlaps the body or bodily sensations. Now that is freeing, right? So this is the mechanism why you feel great after doing yoga. Of course, you can explain it many ways, why it is good, that there are good hormones which are secreting, etc., etc. But just think of this: when your mind is free of all this chatter, you feel absolutely free. Now another way to do that is meditation and dhyana. There are different states of mind where you can sit and get into one of those. There's absolutely nothing. It's so empty and it's so peaceful, right? It's very empty. So that is a fantastic way to find this freedom, and that is why, for no matter reason, you got into yoga, but now you stick with yoga because you find this time that you spend on the mat is very freeing, is very liberating, and it's very it's your comfort zone. However, there's a twist to that. Now, you can be very peaceful when you are in a dhyana or when you are meditating. You can be very peaceful when you are doing yoga, but the moment you get out of your yoga mat, your mind gets agitated again. Now, how do we fix that? So, I know many people. In fact, I once met a yoga teacher. He was complaining that, this yoga practice, teaching my students, it's very liberating. I feel great. But the moment I get out of the studio and go start driving, my mental state is totally gone. It's so agitated. It's so difficult for me. Swamin Wahanse, teach me something to find a peace in that type of a situation. So you see that probably that's the experience for most of you. In the yoga mat, on the yoga mat, you feel great, you feel liberating, and you keep on going to that because it's a liberating experience, which is very good. But it doesn't solve all your problems, all your physical sufferings, mental sufferings, or philosophical sufferings. So we should look a little forward. And now this is the question the original yogis faced. For them, it wasn't about a simple distraction that they needed. What do I mean by a distraction? Whenever you have a issue or a problem, the easiest way to get out of that issue is to create a new issue. And we are probably very familiar with how gossip works in Sri Lanka. Whenever there's a burning issue, you come up with another issue, and that issue covers that old issue. And similarly, when you have a big issue at your workplace, at your home, you go and do yoga. It distracts you, and your mind is temporarily off until during the time that you're on the yoga mat. You can do many things. You can watch a movie. You can watch BTS, the Korean group. A lot of people watch that. There's so many things that you can do. You can take a walk. You can distract your mind with something else, and then have a temporary solace, which is a very good thing. Which is a very good thing to do. But the original yogis like Patanjali, the Buddhist monks, the Yogachara, Vijnanavadi Buddhist monks, they were not interested about this temporary solace. They wanted to find a better solution for this yoga. And in that backdrop only, I'm going to teach you this slumber mind to awaken mind. And how do we do that? Now, this is the sort of crux of my discussion today. How do you wake your mind from your slumber mind? The only thing you need to do is to learn how to just look. Now, what do I mean by that? The only thing you need to know is to learn how to just look, just mindlessly look. That's all you need to know. And that's the starting point of transforming from a slumber mind to an awakened mind. And one more thing, when you do yoga, you find this therapeutic, yoga very therapeutic. And although this therapy happened to you, you did it somewhat unconsciously. You didn't know what it was. Now, by trying to find this new insight, what we are going to do is we are going to use the same therapy consciously. Now, why I said that? You need to decide for yourself, what do you really want? Do you want to pursue yoga like Patanjali did, like the Buddhist monks do? Or do you want just a temporary solace to a distraction? It's a very important thing that I cannot decide for you, that you need to decide for yourself. And what I'm suggesting you is that, of course, you can use yoga as a therapeutic distraction, and you have been doing it unconsciously. Can we do it in a more conscious manner now? And how do you do it is that first you learn the very simple technique of to just look. And what do I mean by just looking? Now, just looking means if you have a window outside, it's dark here, but if you are in a place where it's lit, you can just look outside the window. And if you have trees, you find the trees swaying. Just look at them. Just mindlessly watch them. Sometimes you see the clouds, up in the sky. Just look at the clouds. Just mindlessly look at the clouds. Look at drops of water from the rain pouring. Look at the waves in the ocean. Just look. And when I say just look, I do not mean to gaze or to stare or to focus or to examine or to spy or to scan. I've seen that in many yoga practices, sometimes we say, scan your body from the heel to the crown. You do that. But what I'm asking you is to not gaze or stare or observe with a lot of focus and an effort. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just asking you to mindlessly watch. Mindlessly watch. Just look. Just look is the easiest thing that I could say. Now, what is just looking? Another way to understand what is just looking is that to see the dramas that you watch. I know that there's a drama called Devani Inima in Sri Lanka, which is very popular. I don't know if you watch it. Whenever you go and check on that, when it's posted today, by tomorrow, there's 1 million people who have watched that. But there are some other dramas which are a little, which are more philosophical, or which has a little bit of a story behind that. But still popular. There was a drama called Kumbio. If you go and watch on YouTube, Kumbio has about 300,000 views, but Devani Inima after 24 hours has more than 1 million views. Now, why does that happen? When you look at a complicated story, you need to think. But there are certain stories that you can just watch without thinking. Just watch. And I don't know if you're familiar with this other Netflix series called Black Mirror. They have some great philosophical ideas. It's a drama series. There's also Planet Earth on Discovery. Planet Earth you can just watch. You can watch the chimpanzees, you can watch the herd of elephants, the flocks of birds, you just watch. But watching Black Mirror, a philosophical drama, is different. Another popular thing these days are K-dramas. A lot of young people and old people watch K-dramas. Now you can just watch K-dramas. But I don't know if you have heard of this Korean director called Kim Ki-duk. He has very profound philosophical cinematic dramas. You can't just watch Kim Ki-duk. You need to think a lot. But other K-dramas about the normal romantic love stories, so you can tell where the plot is heading simply by looking at it. But the good thing is that you can just watch them. And all this time, probably your parents, your philosophical friends said that just looking is a bad thing. But now I'm saying just looking is actually a good practice that you need to know and understand in order to awaken our mind. About just looking, what I will do now is that I will help you to figure out if you can just look and the things that you can look at. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to share a YouTube video with you. You can just look at that video, right? Of course, when I say just look, it does not only mean you have to look from your eyes, but it also means that looking from your ears, from your nose, from your taste buds, everything, right? So looking I refer to as sensing. So just say just sensing, right? So for simplicity I'll just say just look. So I will now share my music with you. Just watch for 2 minutes.
Piers Black, you have been described variously as the guru of the square mile, a legend in your own Armani suit, and the greatest businessman this planet has ever seen. How do you regard these claims?
Insulting.
Insulting?
Do you honestly believe words can do justice to my commercial genius, not to mention my personal magnetism?
If I may say so, Mr. Black, your personal qualities obviously do not include modesty.
Modesty is not a word that exists in the Piers Black dictionary. Modesty is for yes men and fools.
It has been said that honesty and fair dealing are not in your dictionary either.
And why would they be? Honesty is for wimps and fair dealing is for losers.
So your business empire has been built on dishonesty and unfair dealing.
I have no time to waste on spurious moral niceties. My empire is built on 3 foundational business principles: profit, profit, and ever greater profit.
On that subject, you have recently been lobbying for bigger bonuses for bankers. Isn't that provocative and unjustified in the present climate?
I regard it as not only justified but imperative.
But
I'll say this one more time, Mohammed. 1.2 billion, that's my final offer.
Right, so you have been just watching, at least my instruction was to just watch. I don't know what you did. You have been watching this video now. Now I'm going to play another video for 2 minutes. Again, my instruction is just watch. I hope you can see a black dot on a white background. Right, so we just watched a video which had a plot, which had a story, and then we just watched at a dot, a black dot in a white background. So did you notice anything that I don't think I will be able to ask each and every one of you. In fact, it would have been better if I could have asked you that you might have noticed that when you were just watching the previous video, the man, I think his name is Piers Black of Square Mile, Guru of Square Mile. So he's a very narcissistic character. And when I asked you to just watch, you were not just watching. You started hating that guy for his guts, or for his arrogance, right? So why? And the next one, the dot. When I asked you to just watch the dot, it was too boring. I could see it in your faces that you look miserable. It was so boring, and they probably you were thinking, what time is this sadhu going to stop this now? And so these are the two extremes. In fact, I asked one of my friend to just watch at his wife's when his wife is talking to him. So around 9 o'clock he went and started looking at his wife, and the wife has asked, why are you looking at me? Then he has told, Ananda Swaminansa asked me to do a meditation and just look at you. And then the wife got so pissed, and there was a big argument, and they had to smash something to get out of that. And then I said, it's fine, it's okay, go and look at a dot on your white wall. So then he was watching at it, and then he fell asleep. Right? So in a summary, this is what happens when you watch something, when you want to just look at something which is too distracting. It's very difficult unless you are trained. Right? You can't just mindlessly look at your fiance or husband or wife or your boss talking to you. You can't do that. You can't just absent-mindedly look at that. You react to it internally. But when you try to look at something too still, that's also difficult. You get bored quickly. In fact, one of the reasons I do not want to teach proper meditation to you is that I don't think you guys take these things seriously. And in one way, I am not ready to teach mindfulness or awakening to you in 1 hour. And on the other hand, you are also not ready to accept it. Again, I know that you are not bad people, but it's just nature. Sometimes, when our only interest is to find that release on the yoga mat, that simple distraction. And if that is your need, go for it. But again, the whole philosophy of yoga is absolutely not about that. It's about something very epistemological. What is knowledge, what is truth, and what is enlightenment. It's a moksha marga essentially. So if you are interested in that, I'm just leaving this tip. Awakening or yoga for me is in that direction. I do yoga as an exercise, but I also do high intensity interval training as an exercise. Both are the same. They more or less yield the same benefits, except yoga is a little more time tested. It has the balance poses, etc., whereas the newly app found exercises don't have that. But apart from that difference, if you take it as a physical exercise, it's the same. But if you look at it from a whole different angle about an activity for mindfulness, you see that all of a sudden a totally different door opens for you. What Patanjali initially said that Yoga Sutra, and even other philosophers, other Upanishads commented about Yoga Sutra. So having said that, again, my simple advice for you is to practice and become a master of just looking, right? And when we are just looking, the video was too distracting and the dot was too boring. It was too still. Now, what if you use your yoga practice to do that, right? Can you just watch, even without scanning or inspecting your body? Just watch. And again, I don't think watching your body is also an easy task. The easiest task to practice just look is to look outside the window and look at a tree swaying, and look at the clouds, look at raindrops on a rainy day. That is the way you can start your practice of just looking. But again, let me tell you again and again, although this might come out as a very simple instruction, this is one of the hardest things that you would ever you would ever practice. Just looking is not difficult. Now, by just looking, I do not ask you to not think about anything. That is not what I'm asking. I'm just asking you to just look. See, this is why it's so confusing. My instruction is very simple. It's just look. But it's so difficult that most of us fail to do that. And I could tell you another analogy of what is just looking is that assume we live by the highway and we go on the on one of these bridges. We can just look. We see the other vehicles moving on the highway. We are just looking, and all of a sudden there are containers, there are sports cars which are appearing. And if someone asks, did you see a container? I would say, yes, I did see a container. But what was I doing? I was not looking for a container. I was just looking, right? So, slumber mind to awaken mind, the only thing that you have to practice is just looking. And now this is the third, I hope that this is the third teacher who's teaching about meditation. Bhante Dhammajiva and Dopul sir also taught you meditation, and I also taught you a very simple thing, which is to just look. What is more important is not trying to understand the philosophical background of this or philosophical meanings of this. The more important thing is to practice just looking. Right? It's so simple, and because it's so simple, I had to bring out all that very complicated theory and tell it to you. It is not complicated, it is not simple, it is a very complicated, profound theory, right? Like King Tissa answered that mango question, which is absolutely not about mangoes or set theory. It is about a profound dependent arising paticca I had to bring out a lot of theory about epistemology and pramana and anumana, upamana, etc. to tell you why just looking is so important. So if you need more philosophical backing to this just look, I can provide you. But I know that the most important thing is just to practice just looking, right? And again, like I mentioned, I am not ready to teach this in 1 hour. It won't be very successful. I can just lay out something about waking up your mind from that, the Jagara mind, according to Mandukya Upanishad, 4 states of consciousness. I could tell you about that, but it doesn't make any sense. The first thing is you need to practice. Right? We can't. I remember one time back there was a joke on radio that they were offering a swimming class through a what do you call this snail mail, postal mail. They were offering a swimming course. And if you are a successful person, the final test is that you need to go to the ocean and swim. If you are successful, that company will issue you a certificate of passing that examination. If you are unsuccessful, the government will issue you a death certificate, right? So what I was going to say is that, like we are trying to learn swimming, we can't just learn it by looking at a set of instruction or listening to a sermon or an instruction guide. We really have to do it. We really need to start doing it. Like the most difficult part of yoga is unfolding that mat and stepping on that mat. The most difficult part of awakening your mind is just trying to look. And if you somehow crack just looking, you have done a lot. You have done almost 50% if you know how to just look. Right. So with that, I will end this sermon, and then it's open for Q&A. I can be here for a long time. Importantly, I was discussing about why yoga shouldn't be taken so lightly, because it's not a stretching exercise. It's a philosophy of moksha. It's a moksha marga. And also the fact that Patanjali, the yoga father of yoga, or at least the one who compiled yoga, the modern day yoga, when he compiled all this, his single motive was not to come up with a better body, but to find this truth or enlightenment or detachment in a philosophical sense, in a practical sense. And then the third part is that how do we do that? Is by mastering just watching. So if you are free today, just go and find the most cheesiest K-drama and just watch. Then you will get a feel of what just looking is. And then the next thing, tomorrow morning, go out and look at the sky, look at the clouds, just watch. Right? Now, by just watching, I'm not asking you to think, I'm not asking you to analyze, I'm not asking you to contemplate of anything, I'm not asking you to not think of anything. Just looking is not concentrating, just looking is not allowing you other thoughts of your mind to come. That is not just looking. Just looking is just looking. Right? So that's the simplest way I could put it. I don't know if it confused you or if it sort of gave you a direction. My hope was that I would confuse you. And if you are confused, I'm successful, because when you are confused, now again I insulted you that why you are bad yogis, you don't even deserve to be called yogis or yoginis. And when I do that in a psychological manner, you are going to either disprove me or find a better way to do yoga. So if I did that, I hope I'm successful. And my aim today was to not teach you about awakened mind, but to confuse you and insult you about how bad yoga or a yogi or a yogini you are.